The line of contestants stretched through the lobby of the Pine City Concert Hall. Young musicians in pressed suits and elegant dresses chatting excitedly about their years of training and famous teachers. At the very back, almost hidden behind a potted plant, stood Lynn. She was 43, though the lines around her eyes made her look older. Her hands, rough from years of work, fidgeted with the strap of a worn leather bag that contained her sheet music. Lynn glanced at her watch. She'd taken the afternoon off from her cleaning job at the Westridge Music Conservatory to be here. 15 years she'd worked there, mopping floors and emptying trash bins while prodigies practiced in rooms she wasn't allowed to enter except with a vacuum cleaner. No one had ever asked if she could play. No one had ever noticed how she listened outside the doors during practice sessions, or how she studied the sheet music left behind on stands. "Next contestant, please step forward for registration," called a young man with a clipboard. Lynn approached hesitantly. The registration table was staffed by 3 college-aged volunteers wearing matching blue shirts with the competition logo. "Name?" asked the girl at the computer without looking up. "Lynn Chen," she replied softly. The girl's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "I don't see you on the pre-registered list. Are you a late entry?" "Yes, I have the form here." Lynn pulled out a crumpled application she'd found on the conservatory bulletin board and filled out in secret. The boy with the clipboard looked her up and down, taking in her simple black pants and white button-up, shirt, clothes she'd ironed carefully that morning but still looked nothing like the performance attire of the other contestants. "This is the Riverside Piano competition," he said slowly as if explaining to a child. "The professional division." "I know," Lynn said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm entering the open category." The 3 exchangers' glances. The third volunteer, a round-faced boy with kind eyes, shrugged and nodded to the computer operator. "Fine. Age?" continued the girl, typing now. 43. The clicking paused. "Years of formal training?" Lynn swallowed. "None." This time all 3 heads snapped up. The girl actually laughed, then covered her mouth quickly. "I'm sorry, did you say none?" asked Clipboard Boy, his eyebrow arched high. "I taught myself," Lynn explained. "I've been playing for about 15 years. "Self-taught," the girl muttered as she typed, shaking her head slightly. "Current teacher or academy?" Continued Clipboard Boy. "None. I work at Westridge Conservatory. Lynn hesitated. "I'm part of the maintenance staff." The boy with the kind eyes frowned slightly, looking uncomfortable. "The janitor?" "I clean the practice rooms," Lynn admitted. Her cheeks burned with shame, but she kept her chin up. Behind Lynn, a couple of teenage contestants had stopped their conversation to listen. One whispered something to the other, and they both snickered. "And what will you be playing today?" asked Clipboard Boy, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor," Lynn answered. This time, the laughter from the teenagers behind her was loud enough for everyone to hear. One of them, a boy in an expensive-looking suit, spoke up. "Ballad No. 1? You've got to be kidding. I've been working on that piece for 3 years with Dr. Rothman." Lynn didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the registration form, focusing on the sound of the pen scratching against paper as the volunteer filled in her performance slot. "You're number 47, he said finally, handing her a small card with the number printed on it. "The competition runs in order. We're currently on number 12. There's a waiting area through those doors." Lynn nodded her thanks and walked toward the doors, aware of the stares following her. As she passed the group of teenagers, one of them stuck out a foot slightly, not enough to trip her, but enough to make her stumble. Their laughter followed her into the waiting room. The backstage area was filled with rows of folding chairs where contestants waited their turn. Many had portable keyboards on their laps, silently practicing their fingering. Others sat with eyes closed, headphones on, listening to recordings of their pieces. Lynn found an empty seat in the corner and placed her bag on her lap. She didn't own a portable keyboard or expensive headphones. Instead, she closed her eyes and began to move her fingers in the air, feeling the music in her mind. A woman sitting nearby watched her with curiosity. She was older than the other contestants, but still younger than Lynn, maybe in her 30s, with her hair pulled back in a neat bun. "First competition?" she asked kindly. Lynn nodded, grateful for the friendly voice. "I'm Nora," the woman said. "This is my 5th year competing. I teach piano at the community college." "Lynn," she replied. I just play for myself usually." Nora looked like she wanted to ask more questions. But at that moment the door opened and a competition official appeared. Numbers 20 through 30. Please follow me for the pre-performance briefing, the official announced. Nora stood up. That's me. Good luck with your performance, Lynn. As the hours passed, the waiting area emptied and filled again as contestants performed, and new ones arrived. Lynn sat quietly watching, listening to snippets of conversation around her. Did you hear about the cleaning lady who entered? Someone said she's playing Chopin. Has to be a joke, right? Maybe she's actually a famous pianist in disguise. Yeah, right. Have you seen her hands? Lynn looked down at her hands. They weren't a pianist's hands. The fingers were strong but short, the skin rough from years of harsh cleaning chemicals. But these hands knew things. They knew how to find melodies in the quiet moments between mop strokes. They knew how to coax music from the old upright piano in the conservatory's storage room, where Lynn practiced during her lunch breaks. She remembered the first time she'd dared to touch a piano. It was her third week working at the conservatory. She'd been cleaning late after everyone had gone home and passed by a practice room where someone had left the light on. The grand piano inside had stood gleaming under the lights, lid open like a giant black wing. Something had pulled her toward it. Just one note, she'd told herself. Just to know what it felt like. That single note had changed everything. From then on, Lynn had used every spare moment to teach herself to play. She started with YouTube tutorials on an old tablet with a cracked screen. When students left sheet music behind, she'd study it carefully before returning it to the lost and found. She learned to read music by comparing the notes on the page to online videos of the same pieces. The competition official appeared at the door again. Numbers 40 through 50, pre-performance briefing. Lynn's heart jumped. She stood up, legs suddenly shaky, and followed the group through a different door into a small room where a stern-looking woman waited. You'll be called in order, the woman explained. When your number is announced, proceed to stage left. Wait for the MC to introduce you, then walk to the piano. You'll have 30 seconds to adjust the bench and prepare. When you're ready, nod to the judges. You have 12 minutes maximum for your performance. Lynn listened carefully, trying to memorize the instructions while her heart pounded in her ears. They were led to another waiting area, this one right beside the stage. Through a small monitor, Lynn could see the current performer, a young man playing something fast and complex, his fingers a blur over the keys. The audience applauded as he finished with a flourish. One by one, the numbers before hers were called. Some performers returned looking pleased, others fighting back tears. Number 47, Lin Chen, called the stage manager finally. Lynn stood. Her legs felt like water, but she forced them to move. The stage manager gave her a puzzled look as she passed. Good luck, he said, sounding surprised at his own words. The stage was brighter than Lynn had imagined, the lights making it hard to see the audience. But she could hear them. As the MC announced her name in the piece, a murmur spread through the crowd. Did he say she's a janitor? Is this some kind of joke? Who let her in? Lynn walked to the piano, a magnificent concert grand that made the conservatory's practice pianos look small. She adjusted the bench, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. Someone in the audience laughed loudly. Another person shushed them, which somehow made it worse. When she finally sat and placed her hands on the keys, Lynn closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of all the empty rooms where she'd played in secret, of all the music that had lived inside her with nowhere to go. She thought of her father, who had played the erhu in their village before they immigrated, and who had died never knowing his daughter had found her own music. She opened her eyes, looked toward the judge's table, and nodded. It was time to play. The first note Lynn played was wrong. Her finger slipped from nervousness, hitting a flat instead of a natural. The mistake rang out through the concert hall and someone in the audience coughed. That particular kind of cough people use when they're trying not to laugh. Lynn's face burned. She paused for a half-second, took a deep breath, and began again. This time her fingers found the right keys. The opening notes of Chopin's ballade floated into the air, gentle, questioning like the beginning of a story told in whispers. For a moment, Lynn forgot where she was. The bright lights, the judges' stern faces, the audience full of people who expected her to fail, all of it faded away. There was only the piano and the music she'd practiced thousands of times in empty rooms when nobody was watching. But people were watching now. In the third row, a woman with glasses nudged her husband and whispered something. Near the back, a young piano teacher leaned forward in his seat, his expression changing from bored to curious. And at the judges' table, the head judge, a famous concert pianist with gray hair and a reputation for being impossible to impress, set down his pen. Lynn reached the part where the piece changed, where the gentle introduction gave way to something more urgent. Her left hand began the rolling accompaniment, while her right picked out the melody. This was where many pianists stumbled. The coordination required was intense, the timing precise. A young man in the front row, one of the contestants who had laughed at her during registration, stopped smirking. His mouth opened slightly as he watched her hands. Lynn played on, losing herself in the music. Her technique wasn't what you'd learn in conservatory. She didn't hold her wrists the way piano teachers insisted, didn't use the standard fingering for some of the passages. But there was something about her playing that made people forget about technique. The way she leaned into certain phrases, the slight hesitation before a key change that somehow made the shift more powerful when it came. The music grew more complex. Lynn's shoulders relaxed as her confidence built. This was the part she loved best, where Chopin's notes tumbled like water over rocks, where the melody hid and resurfaced in unexpected places. Her small body swayed slightly with the rhythm, her face transformed by complete concentration. In the wings, stagehands who normally paid no attention to the performers paused to listen. The stage manager, who had been checking the time to make sure Lynn didn't go over her allotted minutes, forgot to look at his watch. The piece built toward its first climax, Lynn's left hand crossing over her right in a series of difficult runs. She had practiced this section more than any other, working through it again and again during lunch breaks, sometimes using a paper keyboard she had drawn when she couldn't access a real piano. When the climax came, Lynn's whole body seemed to lift with it. The notes thundered and raced, her fingers finding each key precisely despite the speed. A few audience members who had been shifting restlessly in their seats went still. Then came the quiet middle section, like the calm at the center of a storm. Lynn's touch became feather-light, each note placed perfectly in the silence between. The head judge closed his eyes. Lynn didn't see any of this. She had gone somewhere else entirely, to the place music took her, where there were no cleaning carts or mops, no sideways glances or whispered jokes. Just the story told in sound, the journey from those first questioning notes to whatever waited at the end. The famous piano teacher sitting in the judges' panel turned to his colleague and murmured something. The woman next to him nodded without taking her eyes off Lynn. As the piece moved toward its conclusion, building again in speed and intensity, Lynn's face showed every emotion the music contained. Joy, longing, defiance. All the things she never said out loud came through her fingers now. When she reached the section of fast octaves, both hands playing the same notes 8 keys apart, racing up and down the keyboard, a few people in the audience gasped. This was where even accomplished pianists sometimes faltered. Lynn didn't falter. Her hands were sure, finding each pair of notes perfectly, never hesitating even as the tempo increased. In the audience, the same young man who had tried to trip her during registration stared in disbelief. The final moments of the piece approached. Chopin had written an ending that seemed to throw everything into question again. Crashing chords followed by a series of delicate, almost tentative notes before the final, powerful statement. Lynn played those last moments with a sense of absolute certainty. When her fingers struck the final chords, they rang through the concert hall like a declaration, and then silence. For 3 long seconds, no one moved or made a sound. Lynn's hands remained on the keys, her eyes still closed, her breath coming fast from the effort of the piece. The first sound was from somewhere in the middle of the audience, a single pair of hands coming together. Then another joined and another. Suddenly, the entire hall erupted in applause. Someone in the balcony stood up. Then the entire first row was on their feet, and soon the whole audience followed. Lynn opened her eyes, blinking in the bright lights, not quite understanding what was happening. The applause continued, growing louder. People were shouting, "Bravo!" A woman in an expensive dress was wiping tears from her eyes. Lynn stood shakily and gave an awkward bow, unprepared for this reaction. She had imagined every possible scenario, polite applause, uncomfortable silence, even open laughter. But not this. The judges were all writing furiously on their notepads. The head judge looked up at Lynn over his glasses. his expression unreadable. Lynn turned to leave the stage, her legs unsteady. As she walked toward the wings, the applause followed her, refusing to die down. The stage manager was standing there, his clipboard forgotten at his side. "That was," he started to say, then just shook his head, apparently unable to find the right words. Behind the stage, in the waiting area, the other contestants watched Lynn with new eyes. Some looked stunned, others impressed, a few openly jealous. The boy in the expensive suit who had mocked her choice of peace stood with his arms crossed, his face tight. "How did you learn to play like that?" asked a girl who couldn't have been more than 16, her voice full of genuine curiosity. Before Lynn could answer, a competition official appeared. "Ms. Chen, the judges would like to speak with you." A nervous murmur went through the waiting area. This was unusual. Judges typically didn't speak to contestants until after all performances were complete. Lynn followed the official to a small room off the main backstage area. Inside, the 5 judges were seated around a table. The head judge, a stern-looking man named Dr. Wei, who had performed with orchestras around the world, gestured for her to sit. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice grave, "you work as a cleaner at Westridge Conservatory?" Lynn nodded, her momentary confidence fading. "Yes, for 15 years now. And you've had no formal training? No lessons at all?" "No, sir," Lynn said softly. "I taught myself. During lunch breaks, after hours sometimes." The judges exchanged glances. A woman with short silver hair leaned forward. "Your interpretation was unconventional," she said carefully. "But there was something there that cannot be taught." Dr. Wei nodded slowly. "We have a question we must ask. It's unusual, but this is an unusual situation." He paused, then continued. "Would you be willing to play something else for us? Something you haven't prepared for the competition?" Lynn blinked in surprise. "Now?" "Yes," said Dr. Wei, "something simple. Perhaps a scale or a basic exercise. Or anything you choose." Lynn understood suddenly. They wanted to be sure she could actually play, that what they had just witnessed wasn't some kind of elaborate trick or a piece she had somehow memorized without really understanding. "All right," she said, rising from her chair. "I can do that." The small room had an upright piano against one wall, nowhere near as grand as the concert piano on stage. Lynn sat down on the bench, her hands hovering over the keys. 5 pairs of eyes watched her intently. What should she play? Something simple, Dr. Wei had suggested, a scale or basic exercise. But Lynn felt a strange calm now. The worst was already behind her. She had played on the big stage in front of hundreds. This small room with just 5 people somehow felt less frightening. She began to play Mozart's vous dirais-je, Maman, better known to most as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. But she didn't play it as a children's song. Her fingers brought out a delicacy in the simple melody that made it sound fresh and meaningful. Then, without pausing, she began to add variations, the way Mozart himself had written them, first with flowing 16th notes, then with left-hand arpeggios, building in complexity while keeping the familiar melody clear. Dr. Wei's eyebrows rose slightly. The silver-haired woman smiled. Lynn continued, moving smoothly into a Bach prelude she had taught herself after finding the sheet music left behind in a practice room. Her hands were steady now, confidence growing with each measure. She knew these judges could spot every technical flaw, every unconventional fingering choice, but she also knew that what she was showing them was real. When she finished, she placed her hands in her lap and waited. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Dr. Wei cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, your playing is—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Remarkable, considering your circumstances. Your technique is unorthodox, but your musicality is undeniable. You understand the emotional architecture of what you're playing," added a younger judge with round glasses. "Many technically perfect players never grasp that." The silver-haired woman leaned forward. "Tell me, how do you practice without regular access to a piano?" Lynn hesitated, then answered honestly. "I draw keyboards on paper. I practice fingerings that way. And I listen, to recordings, to students playing. I clean the practice rooms during lunch breaks, and sometimes, if a room is empty afterward, I'll sit for a few minutes and play." "And no one at the conservatory has noticed your talent?" asked the 4th judge, a man with a closely trimmed beard. Lynn shook her head. "People don't really notice cleaners. We're sort of invisible." She didn't say it with bitterness, just as a simple fact. The 5th judge, who hadn't spoken yet, finally broke her silence. "Not anymore," she said softly. Dr. Wei looked at his colleagues, some unspoken communication passing between them. Thank you, Ms. Chen. You may return to the waiting area. We'll announce the finalists after the last contestant performs. Lin nodded and left the room, feeling strangely lightheaded. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall for a moment, letting everything sink in. Whatever happened next, she had done it. She had played Chopin on a concert grand piano in front of an audience, and they had stood for her. No one could take that away. When she returned to the waiting area, a hush fell over the room. Then Nora, the community college teacher she'd met earlier, approached her. That was incredible, she said warmly. Truly beautiful playing. Others joined in with compliments, their earlier skepticism gone. Even some of the young contestants who had laughed at her seemed impressed, if reluctantly. But the boy in the expensive suit still glared from his corner. It's a publicity stunt, he said loudly. The judges are just making it interesting for the audience. No way a janitor with no training makes it to the finals. His words hung in the air uncomfortably. Lin looked away, not wanting to engage. She had faced enough negativity in her life to know when to let it slide past her. Nora stepped between Lin and the boy. Sounds like someone's worried about the competition, she said with a pointed smile. The boy flushed and turned away. More contestants were called to perform, and Lin sat quietly, trying to come down from the intensity of her experience. She watched the other performers on the monitor with new appreciation, hearing details in their playing she might have missed before. Hours passed. Lin checked her watch. She would need to catch the last bus home or walk 5 miles. Just as she was considering leaving before the results were announced, the stage manager appeared. All contestants to the stage for results, he called. They filed out in a nervous line. The stage looked different now, with all 47 contestants standing in a semicircle under the lights. The audience, still nearly full despite the late hour, applauded as they entered. Dr. Wei approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience during this extraordinary day of music. Our contestants have shown remarkable skill and dedication. He looked down at a card in his hand. I will now announce the 6 finalists who will return tomorrow for the final round. Lin held her breath along with everyone else. Finalist number 1. Jin Park, a young man stepped forward to applause. Finalist number 2. Nora Winters. Nora gasped happily and moved forward, giving Lin a thumbs up as she passed. Finalist number 3, Huan Li. Another step forward. More applause. Finalist number 4, Lin Chen. For a moment, Lin didn't move, certain she had misheard. Someone nudged her gently from behind. She stepped forward, legs shaking as the audience erupted in the loudest applause yet. She could hear a few cheers from the balcony. The 5th and 6th finalists were called, but Lin barely registered their names through the buzzing in her ears. She had made it to the finals. She, Lin Chen, the invisible cleaner who practiced on paper keyboards, would return tomorrow to play again. As the contestants were dismissed, the boy in the expensive suit who hadn't made the finals brushed roughly past Lin. Enjoy your moment of fame, he muttered. Tomorrow they'll remember you're just a cleaner. Lin let the words slide off her. Nothing could dim the glow she felt inside. Backstage, as the crowd dispersed, a tall man in a crisp suit approached her. Ms. Chen? I'm Thomas Rodriguez, Dean of Westridge Conservatory. Lin froze. The dean of the conservatory where she worked. She had seen him in the hallways occasionally, but had never spoken to him. Was she in trouble for using the practice rooms without permission? Sir, I can explain, she began. He held up a hand, smiling. No need to explain. I came to hear the finals tomorrow and was told one of our staff members was competing. I had to see for myself. He looked at her thoughtfully. How long have you worked at Westridge? 15 years, sir. And in all that time no one realized? He shook his head, seeming genuinely puzzled. Would you come to my office Monday morning? 9 o'clock? I think we need to talk. Before Lin could answer, a young woman approached them, her press badge swinging from a lanyard around her neck. Ms. Chen? I'm with the Pine City Gazette. Would you have time for a few questions? Our readers would love to know your story. Lin blinked in surprise. My story? Yes, it's not every day that a conservatory cleaner becomes a piano competition finalist. It's inspiring. More people were gathering now. Other reporters, audience members, fellow contestants wanting to talk to her. Lin looked around, overwhelmed by the sudden attention after years of being overlooked. I need to catch the last bus, she said, backing away slightly. I'll drive you home, Nora offered, appearing beside her. After you talk to the press. This is your moment, Lynn. The next hour passed in a blur. Lynn answered questions as best she could, trying to describe how she had taught herself to play, how she had dreamed of performing but never thought it would happen. Photographers took her picture. Someone filmed a short video of her for the local news. By the time Nora drove her home to her small apartment, it was past midnight. Lynn sat in the passenger seat, exhausted but unable to stop smiling. Are you ready for tomorrow? Nora asked as they pulled up to Lynn's building. Lynn looked down at her hands, the cleaners, hands that had played Chopin and made an audience stand and cheer. I think I've been ready for 15 years, she said softly. I just didn't know it. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. On her small kitchen table sat the portable radio she used to listen to classical music while she cooked. Beside it was her notebook filled with hand-drawn piano keyboards and notes scribbled during lunch breaks. Tomorrow she would play again. Tomorrow people would see her, really see her. But tonight, in the quiet of her apartment, Lynn finally allowed herself to feel the pure joy of it all. She had been heard. After all these years of silence, she had been heard. Lynn woke before her alarm, her eyes opening to the gray light of early morning filtering through thin curtains. For a moment she lay still, wondering if yesterday had been a dream, but the newspaper on her nightstand confirmed it was real. There she was, her picture on the local section, looking startled under the headline, From Cleaning Rooms to Standing Ovations. She made herself a cup of tea and toast, her morning ritual unchanged despite everything. Only when she opened her closet did reality sink in. What does one wear to a piano competition final? Her black pants and white shirt from yesterday were clean enough, but they weren't exactly performance attire, yet it was all she had. A knock at her door startled her. It was only 7:30. Who would visit so early? She opened the door to find Nora holding a garment bag and a takeout coffee. I thought you might need this, Nora said, holding up the bag. It's a dress. Nothing fancy, but better than what the newspapers will call janitor clothes if you wear the same thing again. Lynn blinked in surprise. You didn't have to. Consider it payment for all the inspiration you gave me yesterday. I've been stuck in a teaching rut for years. Watching you play reminded me why I love music. Nora pushed the coffee into Lynn's hand. Now get ready. I'm driving you to the hall for practice time. Each finalist gets 30 minutes on the performance piano this morning. Lynn hadn't known about the practice time. Without Nora, she would have missed it entirely. The dress was simple but elegant, a deep blue that made Lynn look less tired, less worn by years of hard work. It was a little loose, but a belt from Lynn's drawer fixed that. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. They arrived at the concert hall just after 8. The building felt different in the morning light, less intimidating somehow. A few staff members were setting up, and one of them recognized Lynn from the paper. The piano's ready for you, he said with a smile. Yesterday he might not have noticed her at all. The stage was empty except for the magnificent grand piano, waiting under a single spotlight. Lynn approached it slowly, almost reverently. Yesterday she'd been too nervous to fully appreciate the instrument. Now she ran her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling their perfect weight and response. For her 30 minutes she played scales first, warming up her fingers. Then she practiced parts of the Chopin piece, even though she'd played it flawlessly yesterday. Finally, she tried something she'd been thinking about since last night, a piece of her own. Over the years, in those stolen moments at the conservatory pianos, Lynn had composed music as well as learning it. She'd never written it down properly. She couldn't afford the software that real composers used, and her music notation was self-taught and messy. But the melodies lived in her head and hands, evolving over time. This particular piece had started as a lullaby she created when a coworker's baby visited the conservatory. Over the years, it had grown into something more complex, still gentle at its heart, but with layers of counter-melody and harmonic shifts that reflected her growing understanding of music theory. She was so absorbed in playing that she didn't notice someone had entered the hall until she finished the piece. That was beautiful, said Dr. Wei, standing in the center aisle. I don't recognize it. Whose composition? Lynn's face warmed. Mine, she said softly. Just something I work on sometimes. Dr. Wei's eyebrows rose. You compose as well? Lynn nodded, feeling suddenly self-conscious. Not formally. I don't have the training, Yet, said Dr. Wei with unexpected warmth. Your time is up, I'm afraid. The next finalist needs their practice session. He hesitated, then added, You might consider playing that piece today. But the competition rules say that finalists must prepare 2 pieces, one from the competition repertoire list and one of their own choosing. Dr. Wei smiled slightly. Your own composition would certainly qualify as your own choosing, don't you think? He left before Lin could respond, passing Jin Park. The young man who was first finalist in the doorway. Back in the waiting area, Lin found Nora deep in conversation with Thomas Rodriguez, the conservatory dean. Ms. Chen, Rodriguez said, turning to her. I was just telling Ms. Winters how impressed I am by your performance. And apparently I have some explaining to do about how we missed discovering your talent for 15 years. He seemed genuinely troubled by this oversight. It's not your fault, Lin said. I never told anyone. I was afraid I might lose my job if I was caught using the pianos without permission. Rodriguez frowned. That is unfortunate, and something we need to address at Westridge. But first, I'm looking forward to hearing you play again today. The morning passed quickly. Lin watched the other finalists practice, each bringing something special to the standard repertoire pieces. Jin Park played with technical brilliance, Nora with warm expressiveness, Huan Li with dramatic intensity. The 2 other finalists were equally skilled, and then there was Lin. What did she bring that was different? She wasn't sure herself, but after hearing Dr. Wei's suggestion, she had made a decision. For her second piece, she would play her own composition. Lunch was provided for the finalists in a small room backstage. Lin sat quietly eating a sandwich while the others chatted about music schools, famous teachers, and competition strategies. Their world was so different from hers, yet today she was part of it. Are you nervous? Asked Juan, sitting down beside her. Lin considered the question. Less than yesterday, she answered honestly. Yesterday I was afraid of failing. Today, she smiled slightly. I've already won just by being here. The audience for the finals was even larger than the day before. Word had spread about the cleaner with the magical hands, and people wanted to see for themselves. The local TV station had sent a camera crew. Lin spotted several of her co-workers from the conservatory in the audience, looking just as surprised to be there as she was. Jin played first, his technique as flawless as expected. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Next came Juan, who brought such passion to Rachmaninoff that people were dabbing their eyes afterward. The 4th finalist played Bach with remarkable precision. Then it was Lin's turn. For her first piece, she played the required Mozart sonata, letting the clear, elegant notes fill the hall. Her technique might not have been as polished as Jin's, but there was a sincerity to her playing that made the centuries-old piece sound fresh and immediate. When she finished, she took a deep breath. This was the moment to play it safe or take a risk. She turned to face the audience. For my second piece, she said, her voice surprisingly steady, I will play an original composition called The Invisible. A murmur went through the crowd. Lin glanced at the judges' table. Dr. Wei nodded almost imperceptibly. She began to play, fingers finding the familiar melody she'd created and refined over years of stolen moments. The piece started simply, like the lullaby it had once been, then gradually revealed its complexity, layers of meaning hidden beneath a gentle surface, much like Lin herself. As she played, images flashed through her mind. The conservatory hallways she'd walked thousands of times, mop in hand. The practice rooms she'd cleaned while students played. Oblivious to her presence, the countless hours she'd spent with her paper keyboard, working out fingerings while riding the bus home. The melody reached its emotional peak, a moment of yearning that resolved into acceptance, then quiet triumph. Lin's hands stilled on the keys as the final notes faded. The silence that followed lasted only a heartbeat before the hall erupted. People were on their feet before she even stood to bow. Someone shouted, "Brava!" from the balcony. A woman in the front row was openly crying. Lin bowed awkwardly, still unused to applause. As she left the stage, she passed Nora, who was next to perform. "That was your own music?" Nora whispered, looking stunned. Lin nodded. "It's over then," Nora said with a rueful smile. "No one's going to remember the rest of us after that." But Lin barely heard her. Standing in the wings was Thomas Rodriguez, and beside him, a tiny elderly woman Lin had never seen before. The woman was studying Lynn with intense, bright eyes. "Ms. Chen," said Rodriguez, "I'd like you to meet someone. This is Mrs. Abernathy, founder of the Westridge Conservatory and our principal benefactor." The elderly woman extended a fragile hand. "My dear," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "where have you been hiding all these years?" Before Lynn could answer, she was called back to the stage. All 6 finalists lined up under the lights as Dr. Wei approached the microphone with an envelope containing the results. The audience fell silent as he prepared to speak. Lynn stood there suddenly calm. Whatever happened next, her life had already changed forever. She had been invisible. Now she was seen. Dr. Wei stood at the microphone, the stage lights reflecting off his glasses as he looked out at the silent audience. All 6 finalists stood in a line, their faces showing varying degrees of tension. Only Lynn seemed calm, her hands folded in front of her blue dress, her expression peaceful regardless of what came next. "Before I announce the results," Dr. Wei said, "I want to thank all of our finalists. In my 30 years judging this competition, I have rarely seen such a remarkable display of talent." He opened the envelope with deliberate slowness. "Third place goes to Jin Park." Jin stepped forward to polite applause, accepting his bronze medal with a slight bow. "Second place," Dr. Wei continued, "is awarded to Nora Winters." Nora gasped and moved forward, squeezing Lynn's hand as she passed. The silver medal was placed around her neck as the audience clapped enthusiastically. Dr. Wei paused, building tension before announcing the winner. Lynn prepared herself to applaud whoever won first place. She had already received more than she'd ever dreamed possible, and the first place winner of this year's Riverside Piano Competition is... The hall went completely silent. Lynn Chen. For a moment, Lynn didn't move, certain she had misheard. Then Huan nudged her gently forward. She stepped up to Dr. Wei in a daze as the audience erupted in wild applause and cheers. "Congratulations," Dr. Wei said, placing the gold medal around her neck. He leaned closer and added quietly, "Your composition sealed it. Technique can be taught, but what you have is much rarer." Lynn looked down at the medal gleaming against her blue dress. Just 2 days ago, she had been mopping floors, invisible to the world. Now she stood center stage, bathed in light and applause. The journey between those 2 realities seemed impossible, yet here she was. After the ceremony, backstage became a whirlwind of activity. Reporters wanted interviews. Fellow competitors offered congratulations. Someone handed her a giant bouquet of flowers. Through it all, Lynn answered questions in her soft voice, still processing everything that was happening. "What will you do with the prize money?" asked a reporter. Lynn hadn't even thought about the money. $20,000 more than she earned in a year of cleaning. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly. "Maybe get a real piano. I've never had one of my own." Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly founder of the conservatory, made her way through the crowd with surprising determination for someone so frail-looking. Thomas Rodriguez followed close behind. "My dear," Mrs. Abernathy said, taking Lynn's hand, "I've heard hundreds of pianists in my 92 years, but few with your natural gift. Thomas tells me you've worked at my conservatory for 15 years? Lynn nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "And in all that time no one noticed you playing?" The old woman shook her head, clearly troubled. "That is our failure, not yours." She turned to Rodriguez. "Thomas, I believe we have some making up to do." Rodriguez nodded. "Ms. Chen, Mrs. Abernathy, and I have been talking. We'd like to offer you a position at Westridge, not as a cleaner, but as our artist in residence." Lynn blinked, trying to understand. "Artist in residence? But I don't have a degree or—" "The position is flexible," Rodriguez explained. "You would have access to our facilities to practice and compose. You could perform in our recital series, and if you wished, you could eventually teach. And your salary would be significantly better than what you earn now," added Mrs. Abernathy with a twinkle in her eye. Lynn looked between them, speechless. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," encouraged Nora, who had been standing nearby. "You belong in that world, Lynn. You always did." Before Lynn could respond, another voice cut through the backstage chatter. "Mrs. Abernathy, Mr. Rodriguez, a word please." It was Dr. Wei, looking unusually animated. He pulled the conservatory officials aside, speaking rapidly in low tones. Lynn couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Mrs. Abernathy's eyes widen, then her face break into a delighted smile. Meanwhile, the backstage manager was trying to herd everyone out. "The hall needs to be cleared, folks. There's another event tomorrow." Lynn gathered her things, the flowers, her medal, the small bag she had brought with her yesterday, not expecting to make it to today. As she headed toward the exit, Dr. Wei intercepted her. "Ms. Chen, may I speak with you privately for a moment?" He led her to the small room where she had played for the judges yesterday, closing the door behind them. "I have just had a conversation with Mrs. Abernathy and Mr. Rodriguez about your future," he said. "But before you make any decisions, there is something I want you to consider." He hesitated, then continued. "I am not only a judge and performer. I also serve as director of piano studies at the National Conservatory in the capital." Lynn nodded. Everyone in the music world knew of the National Conservatory. It was the most prestigious music school in the country. "We have a special program for exceptional talents who lack traditional educational backgrounds," Dr. Wei continued. "It is rare that I recommend someone for this program, but after hearing your performance and your original composition, I believe you would be an ideal candidate." Lynn's heart began to beat faster. "What does the program involve?" "A full scholarship for 2 years of intensive study, private lessons with our faculty, access to our facilities and performances, and the opportunity to develop both your playing and your composition skills." He looked at her intently. "It would mean relocating to the capital, of course. It would be a significant change." "Why me?" Lynn asked softly. "There were other talented performers yesterday." Dr. Wei smiled slightly. "Indeed there were. But when you played your composition today, I saw something I rarely encounter, a true artistic voice. Technical skill can be developed, but authentic musical perspective is much harder to find." He paused. "Of course, the Westridge position is also an excellent opportunity. The choice is yours." Lynn's mind whirled with possibilities. After 15 years of stability, difficult, invisible stability, she was suddenly faced with choices that would completely transform her life. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course," Dr. Wei replied. "The offer will remain open for 2 weeks." When Lynn finally emerged from the room, most of the crowd had dispersed. Nora waited by the stage door, keys in hand. "Everything okay?" she asked, seeing Lynn's dazed expression. "I'm not sure," Lynn answered truthfully. "Everything's happening so fast." On the drive home, Lynn told Nora about both offers. Nora whistled low. "Talk about choices," she said. "From invisible to in demand. What are you leaning toward?" Lynn stared out the window at the passing city. "I don't know. Westridge is comfortable, familiar. The National Conservatory would be starting over somewhere new." "Both are amazing opportunities," Nora said. "But which one scares you more?" Lynn looked at her, surprised by the question. "Because that's probably the one you should choose," Nora continued. "Fear usually means growth." When they reached Lynn's apartment building, Nora helped carry the flowers inside. Lynn's tiny living room looked different somehow, smaller, as if she had already outgrown it. "Whatever you decide, promise you'll keep in touch?" Nora asked, heading to the door. "I promise," Lynn said, suddenly grateful for this new friendship that had sprung from the competition. After Nora left, Lynn sat at her kitchen table, staring at the gold medal. Beside it lay the business cards from Rodriguez, Mrs. Abernathy, and Dr. Wei. 3 different futures, all suddenly possible. She made herself a cup of tea and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. For the first time in 15 years, she wouldn't be setting her alarm for 5 a.m. cleaning duty. Tomorrow was a blank page. Her phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Is this Lynn Chen, today's piano competition winner?" asked a friendly voice. "Yes, it is. This is Diane from Pine City Public Radio. We'd love to have you on our arts program tomorrow morning. Would that be possible?" Lynn hesitated only briefly. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with her confidence. "What time should I be there?" After making arrangements for the interview, Lynn returned to the window. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark glass. A small woman in a borrowed blue dress, looking tired but somehow different. Taller, perhaps. More visible. 6 months later, Lynn sat in a spacious practice room at the National Conservatory, working on a new composition. Her first piece, The Invisible, had been professionally notated and published by a small but respected music press. It was now being performed by piano students across the country. The National Conservatory had provided her with her own upright piano in her small campus apartment. Her technique had improved dramatically under Dr. Wei's guidance, and 3 of her compositions were scheduled to be performed in the conservatory's spring recital series. Lynn's phone buzzed with a text from Nora. "Saw your interview in Music Monthly. So proud of you. Pine City misses you, though," Lynn smiled, typing back. "Visit me next month? There's someone I want you to meet." That someone was Juan, who had also been accepted to the conservatory and had become a close friend and occasional collaborator. She returned to her composition, fingers finding the keys with practiced ease. Sometimes she still had moments of disbelief, waking up and expecting to be back in her old apartment getting ready for another day of cleaning. But those moments were growing rarer. Her new piece was called Becoming Visible. It began with hesitant, quiet notes that gradually built in confidence and complexity, like a person stepping from shadows into light, discovering their own voice after years of silence. Lynn played the final section, listening critically. Not quite right yet, but she had time to get it right. For the first time in her life, she had time to develop her gift, to let her music be heard, and she was no longer invisible.